Thank you for attending. My name is Demetrius Kirk. I'm one of the presenters today. On the call with me is Dr. Robert Turner, and we are excited to talk to you about playing to win, eliminating burnout, and becoming a resilient leader. So, without further ado, I'll let Dr. Robert Turner introduce herself, and we will kick this off.
Thank you, DJ. So my name is Dr. Renee Roberts Turner. I am a nurse leader. I've got over 20 years experience in nursing, and I love all things leadership. So DJ loves leadership. I love leadership, and you can't be a leader without acknowledging that we all have burnout and then trying to figure out how we address it. So I am excited about today's conversation, and our goal is again that you walk away with some tidbits. So we're going to talk a little bit about resiliency. And well, first we're going to talk about burnout, and we're going to do some exercises, and then we're going to talk about resiliency and some steps in order for us to keep burnout. We can't keep it away, but we can keep it at bay. And so
I,
and
I
so our
agree.
goal, yeah, our goal is for us to walk away with some sort of action plan for us, for each of us. And DJ and I will be participating through this process.
And let me introduce myself. I failed to introduce myself. My name is Demetrius. I am a nurse as well as a healthcare consultant. About 15 years in healthcare. And for the last, I would say 10 years, I've been at some leadership role, most recently at the C-suite level of a hospital. So thank you, Dr. Roberts Turner, for doing this with me. And without further ado, let me switch it over to our next slide.
So understanding burnout. Before we do that, how many people are on the line, DJ?
See, I see Melissa's in. I'm wondering if we're having some issues, with our thing, because I see just Melissa. So if she wants to take it off, we can make this a really intimate session. Um, I'll have Angie kind of do a follow up on the side and make sure people aren't
Okay.
having issues getting in. But
Okay.
uh, you can go ahead with, you want me to do the poll?
Yeah, let's do it because I think we can both we can start that conversation if that's okay with you.
Okay, let's do that poll. Pull that question back up. Apologize, I had it ready. And I think that the question at bay here is, how do you deal with burnout? And
Right.
we'll be flashing that on the screen. Here we go.
And you should be able to just type your answer in. And so, Melissa, whatever your answer is, I'm going to type mine in. DJ will type it in. I think just so we can have a quick conversation about that. Um, yeah. Did it come up? Let me make sure I have my
It's
little
taking
phone.
its little sweet time, the software. I would say put it in the chat then, and since we can't get the poll
Okay,
going,
let's do that.
that's
So,
the resilientness. How do you deal with burnout?
all right. So,
And I see we have Martha, Melissa. If you want to put in the chat how you deal with it, sleep and rest. I see
mhm,
Dr. Roberts
sleep.
Turner.
Angie said sleep too.
I'm going to say rest and TV.
And eating, rest and TV. Okay,
I think what's interesting is we're all going to have a different perception of how we
yeah,
deal with burnout.
exactly.
But I think what's important, no matter what, Dr. Roberts Turner, is that we deal with it.
Hmm.
Um, so you want to talk to us a little bit about understanding
Sure.
burnout?
Yeah, sure. I do want to just we sent that one pager out ahead of time, um, the self-care check-in. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that because I actually did the exercise. So I'm going to be in full disclosure. Self-care is not really my thing, but I know it's really important when you talk about resiliency. And the question at the end of that exercise was, what surprised you most about your responses? And I think surprised me most is I gave lower scores to things like fun, play, things that really um, speak to you celebrating some of your or taking a moment. And so I think from this exercise, I've decided that I've got to be more intentional with that. So again, thinking about when you don't celebrate, you don't have fun, you're causing yourself more burnout. You're not as resilient. And so I think that this is a really good exercise. I don't know. Um, Is it Melissa who's on the call? If you were able to do that exercise, but I think it's a really good exercise for us to do a check-in. But we can get right into the presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about burnout itself and understanding what it is. You can go to the next slide, DJ. So we always start with the definition. I feel like I'm an educator, DJ's an educator. We like to start with the foundation. And so what is the definition of burnout? And it's really the state of this chronic physical and emotional exhaustion, resulting in prolonged exposure or demanding work-life circumstances. And it's characterized by overwhelming stress, detachment, reduced sense of personal accomplishment. And so if you think about it, that's really a pull on us, that those in the overwhelming stress, the detachment, the reduced sense of personal accomplishment, like that over time is what we define as burnout. You can go to the next slide. So signs of burnout. And so this is where, we as nurses or healthcare professionals, we know we have this insult and then there's signs of it that we may not even know what the insult was, but the signs of it may not even be connected. So some signs of burnout are fatigue, irritability, lack of motivation, difficulty concentrating, and a diminished sense of personal and professional fulfillment. And so when you start to when that burnout, those levels get higher, you'll see that difficulty concentrating, it becomes more difficult to concentrate. You become more irritable. I know for me, I'm very, 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 very irritable. That's probably my number one sign. How about you, DJ?
Listen, when I'm getting burnt out, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just need to go to the beach and relax. I need me time.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I often don't recognize the signs before just burnout happens.
Right, right. Yeah. Luckily, sometimes we have people around us, right, that remind us, like I know my daughter sometimes like, all right, ma, like take a chill pill. So luckily, there's people around us that can help let us know these triggers that they've come in to place. You can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So the impact on well-being and performance. So unaddressed burnout can negatively impact your physical and mental health, leading to issues like anxiety, depression, and a decreased overall well-being. And we talk a lot about well-being, and I feel like since the pandemic, the whole piece about well-being has become more and more of a conversation in healthcare. Prior to COVID, when we brought this stuff up, people were like, oh, that's soft, just keep
Mm-hmm.
going, people need us. And right. And so now I think with the pandemic and seeing that we were in a place we had never been, there was so much uncertainty, there's big conversations about well-being. There's programs being built around well-being, which is a good thing. Thank goodness. Right.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in the healthcare and probably, I feel like in America, I was thinking about this today, we're very reactive versus trying to be proactive. So now we're reacting
Why
to something else that
why is
happened.
that, Dr. Roberts Turner? Why are we more reactive than proactive?
I don't know. I mean, one part of me makes me one part or one thought I have is that when you're reactive, you're like the superhero, right? You're responding, and then that rush you get versus planning for something. So, you know what I mean? Like when you plan for something and it happens, you're like, okay, but when you respond to something, maybe there's more of an adrenaline rush. I don't know, but we as Americans, we love to be reactive.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think you 100% is oftentimes we're reactive. We don't have to deal with the issue right now, so why deal with it? It's easier
Yeah,
to brush it under the rug until we absolutely have to deal with it. But I think
right,
when we do that, it impacts our well-being, it impacts our performance, whether we're a
right,
leader or from a professional standpoint or a personal standpoint,
right.
it impacts us 100%. So
It does.
we should be dealing with these things head on, and because that will prevent burnout and lead to our resiliency, and that's what we're chatting
Absolutely.
about.
Absolutely. You can go to the next slide. So, why is it important that we address burnout? Recognizing and addressing it is crucial, as it can prevent more severe health consequences and allow individuals to regain a sense of control, purpose, and work-life balance. When I think about this, I think about how you may have already a pre-existing condition, right? And now you add on stress and burnout, that is going to exacerbate that. I always
Yep.
think about, again, going back to COVID, those individuals that didn't really do well had pre-existing conditions. It's the same thing with burnout. So you're adding on some additional stress. And so if we can eliminate that, I think, we'll all probably live a little bit longer too. We can manage it in a way that's appropriate. Um, so I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, DJ, but I
No,
think
but
it's just important.
I think to the point right where I'm getting emails, people are having trouble getting in. So I do have
Oh, okay.
Martha and Melissa here who are able to get
Okay.
in. So because we are a little smaller group, I'd like to see with Martha or Melissa, are you guys having any issues with burnout? Have you experienced being burnt out? Have you dealt with being burnt out? And if you're having issues with your mic, you can definitely put some things in the chat. I know we were having some technical issues earlier. I'll take you over to the next slide.
Okay. All right. So this is an activity we definitely want Martha and Melissa, if you could participate. Oh, sorry, let's look for the chat. All right. Um, this is an activity we want you all to try to complete for us. And so and then we'll discuss it together. So take a few minutes to think about your workday and jot down activities, tasks, situations that you find particularly draining. So is the link to can we put the link to the Energy Zappers in the chat too, so they can, because I don't think
Definitely.
they have access to that.
We can definitely
And
put
then
that in there.
yeah. Do you have it, DJ, to pull up so we can take
Yeah.
a look at the tool?
Angie will
And I'll
place
put
the
the slides up.
link
There's
in
the
the
link.
chat.
Perfect. Okay.
And I'd like to say, right, when you get this right, we're talking about energy zappers. And when we think about energy zappers, these are things that drain us. And these can be, I'm going to break this down into 3 areas for you. They can be physical drains, such as lack of sleep, feeling tired, feeling sore. They can be mental drains, such as unfinished tasks, clutter, decisions you've been putting off. We just talked about that, right? Being reactive. And then there can be things like emotional drains. These are things like unresolved conflicts, feelings, a shoulda, woulda, coulda behavior, things that impact us emotionally. So try to think about those things: psychological, mental, emotional, and they can be professional or personal, but these are things that are taking our energy away and really, causing a drain on us.
Right. Right. So
So
how about if you all take just a few minutes, and are you able, Martha and Melissa, can you access the document there? The link is in the chat. Yes. Okay. How about you, Melissa?
I can see Martha. Let me peek in Melissa. I see Melissa's. Let's see. I think Martha might have lagged out. Oh, there she goes. She's
Oh,
backing in.
she entered
Backing in.
again.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So while they're thinking about their personal energy zappers, I know when we were talking about this episode, or talking about this exercise, me and you were kind of bantering back and forth about our personal energy zappers, and
Hmm.
it was interesting because we wasn't using the term energy zappers. It was just like, these things that are bothering us. These are
Yeah.
things that's wasting our time, and
Right.
taking time out of our day. And I know we went back and forth on it. And we settled with the term energy zappers, and we have this worksheet that is in the chat that we are going to utilize. It was interesting for me as I started to do this exercise, and start to put down everything I feel like that was zapping my energy. There was some things on there that, for lack of a better word, I didn't feel or I didn't know was zapping
Mm.
my energy. But
Hmm.
when I went to
Hmm.
put it down, I was like, oh,
Right. Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's good sometimes to do some of these exercises because to your point, it kind of just becomes part of, and you're just like, you know what I mean? Like, and you don't even
Yeah,
realize that, but taking the time to really think about whatever it is, in this case, what is draining our energy, the exercise itself, because then at least when you're aware, you know you can step away, right? Like, you know, okay,
100%.
I need to be away from this individual or this situation or whatever it is. Yeah. But I remember that conversation us having about uh, the thing, you know, what are these things that really just are, I call them um, nuisances. You know what I mean? Like, they're just these
Yeah.
nags that just, yeah, take you off your game too. They can really take you off your game.
Take off your game, impact how you respond and act to other people.
Hmm.
So many different things that, when you talk about these energy zappers, right? You think about the
Yeah.
ones that are professional at work. I don't even want to go to work because I'm going to see the zapper.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can be a person, you know, what I found too, and I talk sometimes about this. Sometimes, you know, I feel like we have these things that are like our values, right?
Yeah,
Things that are like so important to us. And when someone or something violates that, that can drain because you know, and then you don't like, you know, that is going to drain, you know, they violated something, and by not responding can be a energy zapper, right? Because
yeah,
you're trying to protect. And so even that sometimes just trying to make sure you're staying in this professional staying professional in this environment can drain your energy and not responding to that. So I think it's not only, it could be, and then if you did respond, that definitely could drain your energy.
definitely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can get ready to go over my zappers. Welcome, Bob Lane. Welcome, Annie. Thank you for joining us. We're at the
Hey.
part of our exercise, and you should see this in the chat. Um, I agree, not responding. Yes, not responding. You should see that in the chat. Angie, and for the new people that have come in, if you can redrop the Energy Zapper worksheet in the chat, as well as the self care check in the chat for our people who have just joined us, so that way they know exactly what we're talking about. Once again, we've done an exercise where we've identified our energy zappers, and I'd like to go ahead and share mines. I did the exercise, and there were two things that I thought was draining my energy. And the first thing was was a personal thing, and it was a physical energy drain. And for me, it was the lack of exhaustion, the lack of sleep. There are many nights that I am tossing and turning because I have so much stuff on my mind. I don't know how to turn off my mind, right? Or I'm staying up late. I'm trying to complete deadlines. So for me, what I want to do, my goal to zap that energy zapper is to develop a routine, set a standard like I do for everything else, right? Set a standard for me to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And I know for some that's like, wow, but I need to set that standard because when we talk about burnout, what am I really doing for my not only my professional self, but my personal self if I'm steady taking 4 or 5 hours a day of sleep? That's not enough
Mhm.
for me. So for me, that was a physical drain. And my action item that I'm gonna do is, aim to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep consistently throughout the week. The second drain that I had was the mental energy drain. And I think we all have dealt with this at some time. And that's just incomplete tasks, right? I have a constant to-do list, and it's not something that's always drained me, but more recently, since I became a kind of independent consultant, it's kind of drained me. So I think I'm going to tackle this as how I used to tackle this when I was an executive. I used to come into the work every day and take a sticky note off my desk, and I would write down my top 3 to 5 things that I had to get done before I left that day. And once I scratched that off, I felt accomplished, right? It's something about scratching off a task that's
Mhm.
complete. So what I'm going to do now is go back to that, come in, get my sticky notes, and write down 3 to 5 things that I must accomplish before I close my laptop for the day. And as I accomplish them, scratch it off and get those endorphins that are
Right.
released, that dopamine that's released as you complete something. So
Right.
those are my two things that I felt like were draining me, and I'm gonna put that action into place to really get over that hump.
Nice. Nice. I don't know, Martha, or if anyone else would like to share if they have um, any energy zappers at all, or if they were like just one or two that maybe are in your space. I can share too. Probably for me, an energy zapper are probably people are seem to drain my energy in my work environment. It's not so much the work; it's It's a lot of time it's people and behaviors that are energy zappers for me. And so I think sometimes not addressing it helps, but also um, sometimes just walking away is probably the
Yeah.
best thing. Yeah.
And I think saw Martha put in the chat, argumentative people.
Yes. Yeah.
Take it
Yeah.
to a whole new level.
They sure do. Yes,
Take
they
it to a
do.
whole new level.
That they
Um,
do.
so as we transition from, we've talked about burnout. Dr. Roberts Turner has given you the symptoms of burnout. We want to transition that now that we're starting to identify our zappers and be able to zap them. We want to transition from how do you turn burnout into resilience? I think that's very important for us to kind of learn how to turn burnout into resilience. So resilient leadership is the key to making the shift from burnout, right? We got to get out of it. It's not just about surviving adversity, but navigating through it. See, as leaders, as humans, we have to adapt to change and be willing to adapt. And I think that as we go through this presentation, you're gonna learn four things that I'm gonna give you, or four tools I'm gonna give you to be willing to that will help you be resilient. One of the things I want to talk about is maintaining a positive attitude.
Hmm.
Maintaining a positive attitude will help us shift from feeling overwhelmed to seeing opportunities as challenges. We all have opportunities in our day-to-day life. I'm sure Dr. Roberts Turner,
Yes.
you've
Yes.
had some things that were setbacks, but you turned them into challenges. We're going to talk about leveraging emotional intelligence, and I'm going to talk about it from the us perspective. I think when people say emotional intelligence, they're always talking about reading the room and learning about other people's. I want to talk about self-regulation, our
Mm.
emotional intelligence, and then talking about learning to bounce back from setbacks and turning our failures, as I've talked about, into lessons. From that, we can inspire ourselves to persevere.
Hmm.
So, like we did earlier, what is resilient leadership? When I think about resilient leadership in my own life, to me, it's about how I navigate the challenges that could lead to burnout. See, I found that by adapting to change, I can reduce the pressure on myself. Dr. Roberts Turner, do you deal with perfectionism like I do, wanting to be perfect?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Yes, that is definitely something I deal with. I struggle with perfection.
We try to be perfect, and I think it's just natural, right? We want to be perfect, but
Yeah,
that leads to burnout because we're
it does.
aiming for something that may not be
Hmm.
achievable. And I'm not
Yep.
saying we can't be perfect in what we do, but oftentimes I hear people say, I am my own worst critic. We don't realize that we are burning ourselves out being
Yeah.
our own worst critic.
Yeah.
So when we talk about professionalism, we have to be realistic we have to be realistic about what we have going on. As
Hmm.
I said, by adapting to change, I can reduce the pressure on myself, which is crucial to preventing me becoming overwhelmed and burnt out. Maintaining a positive attitude helps me stay focused on solutions rather than getting stuck in ruts.
Can I just say, I think that that's a key piece here,
Yes.
because if we, it could be some situations going on, and I think to your point, being positive or thinking about what part of this can I control helps you move forward, and that's been a tactic I have taken on for many, many years. I can't control everything, but within every situation, there is a piece that I can control that will allow me to move forward. So I kind of take it from a kind of a slightly different standpoint. It's not necessarily a positive mindset because I say all the time, I start from negative Nelly. That's who I am. I start off my glass is half empty. That's just who I am. I have acknowledged that that's who I am, but I don't stay there very long. I move from negative to what can I do about it? And I
Yeah.
think whatever that is, however you are, whoever you are, you've got to move into a positive mindset or move into what part of this can I control. So I think that's huge when you talk about the ability to be resilient. Absolutely.
Definitely. So, for me, the key characteristics of resilient leadership, and I think everybody's going to have their own, but if we can operate from this mindset,
Hmm.
resilient leadership means bouncing back from setbacks, trying to avoid prolonged stressors,
Right.
learning from our mistakes, which reduces the pressure of perfectionism, and staying motivated through obstacles so burnout doesn't take over. those are the key things I want you to take when we talk about the definition of resilient
Mhm.
leadership. Now, as we talk about, right, the key characteristics, I told you I was going to break that down into 4 areas that I want you to focus on. And that is adaptability, emotional intelligence, a positive mindset, and effective communication. Once again, those 4 things: adaptability, emotional intelligence, positive mindset, and effective communication are essential from bouncing back when things go awry and things become tough. See, each of these traits play a vital role in managing stress and avoiding burnout. By focusing on adaptability, you can adjust when changes come your way without feeling overwhelmed. How many of us on this call are not malleable? We're so rigid, and that rigidness stops us from moving forward. We have to be adaptable. I know I'm guilty of being it. I don't know, Dr. Robert Stern, are you guilty of being
Sometimes.
rigid?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, at first I am. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can be flexible, but yeah, of course, this is the way it's gonna be, and then I have to like give in after like a week if it doesn't work.
So we talk about emotional intelligence, right? This helps us process our emotions in a healthy way, right? Preventing emotional exhaustion. When we talk about, once again, emotional intelligence, we're focused on us, not necessarily the team at this point in this PowerPoint. How do we process our emotions so that way we're able to know how we're feeling? How do we process that? And I think that's a learned skill. It's okay to be sad, but we don't have to waddle in it.
Right.
We don't have to take it all over, right? We don't have to take it from meeting to meeting. I always give the example. I'm a nurse by trade. You get a nurse that goes into a patient room. That nurse is upset. They give it to that patient. That nurse leaves. Another person comes in. That patient gives it to that person that came in, and now the cycle just continues to spread. So we have to learn how to manage definitely our
DJ,
emotions.
can
Yeah.
can I just chime in here on the emotional intelligence piece? I
Yes.
think you bring up a really good point to your, it's not really about, of course, it's about us connecting to other people and having that piece as we interact. But I think we have to understand and know who we are in order to truly lead and to truly be in this space. And so that's why when I talked about like I know I'm a negative person, like I understand that about myself. I know who I am. And so I think a part of growing as a leader is knowing who yourself so that you know how you're going to respond so that you can also help mount like shift and mold yourself as a leader as well. And so I think this emotional intelligence around our own self is really, really important. I spend a lot of time self-reflecting and reflecting on situations and could I have done it differently and can I,
Yeah.
and I think that has taught me a lot about who I am as a person, and accepting who I am and knowing that I can grow and change as well. So I think the emotional intelligence piece as it relates to us is really important, as you stated.
So I'm going to switch over to diving a little bit more in adaptability, which is one of the key things of resilient leadership, as we talked about, being malleable, especially when, constant changes are coming from our work life, from our home life, right? We have to be able to adjust to prevent feeling overwhelmed. See, being adaptable allows you to navigate these changes once again without feeling stuck or overwhelmed, which is key to preventing burnout. And once again, that is the focus of this webinar's prevention of burnout. When new obstacles arise, you have to ask yourselves, am I going to sit here and waddle over this new obstacle? Or am I going to get this letter and I'm going to climb over this obstacle? Stand open to new ideas and solutions allow you to climb over these obstacles and be adaptable. I know in my early career, I wasn't as adaptable. To your point, when we talk about leadership, it was my way or the highway. Somebody came with something that I didn't know about or wasn't my ideal. It wasn't flying. But I had to learn that all the best ideas didn't have to come from me. In fact, none of the best ideas came from me. So I had to learn to be adaptable and I had to be willing to pivot from my failures, right? I had to be willing to say, okay, that's a failure. Maybe if we make a little tweak to our strategic plan, we can achieve that KPI.
Right,
So
right.
once I learned to be adaptable, success was coming through the door.
Mhm.
Dr. Roberts, you got any stories about some
Yeah.
issue where you had to be adaptable?
Well, I always preach that to your point. It's better to be flexible, right? So I always start with a plan, but I'm definitely willing to shift if my team wants to do something different. If we can, if everybody is clear about what the goal is or what the outcome is, who cares how we get there, right? In
Agree.
the end, as long as the outcome is met. And then, especially when you're leading teams, the more that you allow them to shift and create and build the plan and the implementation piece or whatever that is, the how, then they own it. And so I think as leaders, the more we give to our teams in terms of leadership and as long as we're meeting this end goal, however we get there is how we get there. And so I think in terms of I've learned that I'm very adaptable. I can do it. I tell my team all the time, do whatever you want as long as we I don't care how it looks, just don't break any laws or do anything illegal. But yeah.
Definitely. Let me flow over to the next one here. So this next one is EI, right? And when we talk about EI, this is a trait that we have to master. And we have to master for many ways, right? A lot of people talk about it from the employee perspective. Once again, I want you to focus on you, managing your stress and preventing burnout. See, it's about recognizing your emotions during challenging time and responding in a way that keeps you grounded rather than letting stress take over. Let me tell you, I've lost some jobs because I didn't have emotional intelligence and I didn't know how to check my emotions at the door. There were plenty of times as a younger me, somebody said something and I came back and I was correct, but maybe not in that in that moment did my statement have to be said, right? Or I didn't have to respond to my boss in that moment in front of people. So learning how to check my emotions would have definitely kept me in a few more jobs over my career. By managing my emotions effectively, I can stop burnout before it starts. So you think about it, right? I remember one job, we had high turnover. And one day my boss said, another one quit. And I said, well, it's no surprise. So we don't have orientation process. I was unemployed the next day because I didn't know how to manage my emotions. I was frustrated and I wanted to get out what I had to say, but there was a better way for me to get out what I had to say. And when you talk about burnout and you talk about stress, well, there's nothing that's going to stress you out more than hearing them say, unfortunately, we're going in a different direction.
Right, right.
So that was my experience with emotional intelligence. And that's when I learned to kind of check my emotions. What about you, Dr.
Mhm.
Robert Sterner?
Yeah, I think I learned the hard way. Not the hard way, but I know that I roll my eyes. I know I have an attitude. I mean, I know all that about myself. And I remember having a conversation with my mom one time. I'm like, how come nobody is telling me I shouldn't be doing that? Like, I know I'm doing it. And how come no one is telling me? She was like, Renee, when it matters to you or the organization, when it becomes a problem, they'll let you know. And I thought to myself, but I know that I'm doing this. I know that I shouldn't be doing these things. And so I think sometimes if we're aware of something that we're doing and it's causing a negative outcome, instead of us waiting for somebody to tell us, we should just go ahead and change it. And so I really had to work on how and sometimes I just can't help it. It is what it is. But I'm aware, again, being aware of it. And I think sometimes being aware of it and then trying to figure out how you can shift and change is really important.
Definitely
Yes.
agree. Definitely agree. I had put that question on there just to ask the guests: do they use EI in their personal life, and are they conscious of emotional intelligence in your personal life? I think some of us are not. Like, and I gave a prime example of a young me who was not conscious of emotional intelligence. I didn't know how to regulate my emotional intelligence, and it cost me a few jobs over the course of my career. I'm not proud to say it, but ultimately I learned from it, so it made me who I am today.
Yeah. Yeah.
We move over to a positive mindset, and we talked about this earlier, right? A positive mindset is the key to resilience, especially when facing challenges that can lead to burnout. We all have had deadlines, we all have failed, but what makes us different is how we responded to those failures or to those deadlines or those near misses, right? We can sit there and waddle, or we can have a positive outlook, which will help us stay optimistic and focus and carry things through. When we view obstacles as opportunities for growth and learning, it shifts our perspective. See, instead of seeing setbacks as insurmountable barriers, we can reframe them as temporary and use that as motivation to improve and be innovative. This approach not only helps us prevent mental fatigue, it helps keep our stress levels down. It helps prevent frustration. I can't tell you once again how many projects I went into as a young me. And I'm like, this ain't gonna work. I think you called it negative Nancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I went into that project and I was negative Nancy, guess what happened to that project?
It
You, th-
failed.
you think it worked?
No, probably not.
It didn't
Probably
work.
not.
It,
Yeah.
it didn't work. I looked at it as another task my boss was giving me. I looked at it as another thing that I have to do, and I'm already buried behind it. I don't have time to do it. So what did I do? I developed that mindset, and I definitely didn't do it. I came up with every excuse
Yeah.
not to
Yeah.
get the job done, not to get the task done. So it's important that we have a positive mindset.
Can I just add one more piece here? I think
Yeah.
sometimes we might limit ourselves in terms of what we could do, right? So when we think about these spaces where we're like, we're in a difficult situation and trying to figure out how do we move forward, I've learned if you take some time to really think about what's important to you and how you can take that and put that into your work, it's amazing how you can shift your whole work environment. So when we talk about positive mindset, I think something else to think about is how do you make whatever it is or this situation, um, how do you shift it in a way that speaks to you? And that again puts the control back on you, right? And
Yeah.
which makes then it makes it easier for you to motivate or move through something. But I think we just need time sometimes just to reflect and to really think about how we can maneuver or shift through an incident or an event or a project and make it meaningful to us too. And that just takes some time to think through.
I think time, growth, a combination of things, right?
Yeah.
You have to be willing to grow, and it goes back to right adaptability. You
Hmm.
gotta be willing to be malleable. We can't be so
Yep.
rigid, and we're humans. Sometimes we're very rigid. Where sometimes we can be stubborn. So we have to be willing to be malleable. Have to be willing to be flexible, adaptable. I know that's something I'm still working on.
I'm very stubborn. So you're not alone. I think we all are because we think we know everything, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So we move over to effective communication, and you know, this is one of the key things of a resilient as well, right? Especially when we talk about managing our stress levels and burnout. It's important that we have clear communication because this will allow us to express our needs, set expectation, and offer support when it's needed most. But what I want to focus on when we talk about effective communication is that set expectations. Let's talk about the work-life balance. We don't set expectations. We don't communicate that my day ends at 5. We don't know how to say no a lot of the time. So, as a resilient leader, we have to adapt our communication style depending on the situation. We have to ensure that our message is understood. If we're saying no, we have to understand that we have to ensure that they understand no means no. We have to be flexible in how we communicate to prevent misunderstandings. I tell people all the time how I communicate to person A is not how I communicate to person B. Some people I need to be a little bit more direct so they know not to try me. And some people I can be a little bit more relaxed, but I have to be malleable as we talked about adaptable, and my communication styles have to be adaptable. So there's no
Hmm.
misunderstandings and it doesn't lead to stress or
Hmm.
frustration. It's
Hmm.
also important that we be an active listener, right? We have to take time to understand us. Usually when we're talking about active listening, we're talking about listening to somebody else. We have to learn to listen to our inner compass. We have to learn to listen to our body. We have to learn to listen to what it's telling us. This will help eliminate stress, help eliminate burnout, and help us be resilient leaders. I don't know, Roberts Turner, if you want to add something to
Hmm.
that effective communication.
Yeah, I always think about when I think about communication to your point, like you know how you're talking to somebody, they just don't get it, or they're not hearing you, or I tell my team all the time, always make sure that the message um, is said in a way that the person can hear you. And sometimes, it has to do with who you're talking to and what level they're on, or and so your messaging needs to be different. I can tell DJ something one way, but when I say it to my husband, I'm going to say it differently because I know
Mm-hmm.
what his motivators are. I know what he's going to hear. I know what words that are. And so some of it is about learning and knowing your audience when you're communicating. But it is very frustrating. And I think this definitely causes me a little bit of burnout is when people don't understand what I'm trying to say. And so I try to step back and was like, and then go back to my objectives and my goals
Yeah.
of the conversation to make sure that I'm hitting on all of those. And then also remembering what is it that motivates this individual? How can I get them if I'm trying to get them to yes or to do what I want them to do? What do I need to say in order for that to happen? So effective communication is huge. If we can't communicate well, we can't get anything that we would like in life.
And when you
Anything.
talk about burnout, that's what's going to happen.
Yes. Yes.
So I want to talk to you about some strategies to help you build your personal resilience. And some of these are things that I personally do. The first being mindfulness and self-awareness. Now, when we talk about mindfulness, it's about staying in the present moment now, the moment that it is, and being aware of how I'm feeling and how you're feeling at that time. So when we talked about that active listening, right, I told you to focus on active listening to yourself, right? And that has to do with that mindfulness, right? How are you feeling? Processing your own emotions. Self-awareness is recognizing when stress is building up. How do you do this? Well, let's start with some simple mindfulness practices, right? Whether it's doing short meditations, taking short walks, or doing deep breathing exercises, right? It's about having time for yourself. That is the key thing, having time for
Mm.
yourself. Checking in with yourself, right? I find myself doing this now. Hey, DJ, how are you feeling? How are you processing your emotions? I've learned to do that over time. I think it's something that is definitely learned, but it's something that I now do that really helps me process the day. As I get ready to end for the day, I kind of replay the day. So that way, when I'm done with work, I'm done with work. I'm not thinking about it. I've already replayed it at my desk. I'm not thinking about it. And it's definitely a challenge, right? I work from home, so it's even more of a challenge now. But I find that if I can replay it before my kid and my wife gets home, then I have enough time for them. I'm not taking home work per se, even though I work from home. Another thing is stress management, right? Stress is a given that everybody will be stressed in life, but how we manage it is going to make the difference. Effective stress management means actively finding ways to reduce or cope stress. I have a way that I manage stress. I'm in Hawaii now, but back when I was in Detroit, I used to take time when I got stressed and I would go DJ in the basement. That's what I love to do. Here in Hawaii, I don't have those turntables, so I'm fortunate to be able to walk across the street to the beach or walk down to a Starbucks, right? Those are things that help me de-stress. And those are things that help me kind of relax and keep me grounded. And then the last strategy I want to talk to you about is just ensuring that you start to put work-life balance first. And I hear people say, well, how do I do that? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. I guarantee you, everybody on this call has a calendar. We schedule everything else out. Why are we not scheduling stops at the end of the day? Why are we not scheduling our lunch breaks to make sure we get our lunch breaks? Why are we not scheduling whatever it is that we need to do for us personally? We will schedule everything to the heels and make sure we don't miss a meeting. But when it comes to us personally, we don't place that on the schedule. So I don't know, Dr. Roberts Turner, how do you balance your work-life balance?
I'm not an expert at that at all. I was sharing with you earlier. Every now and then I get a jolt, and I was just talking to my project lead as we were walking out together. I said I'm going to take off a week because my 25th year anniversary is coming up, and I'm going to make a plan for that, and then I'm going to take off this Friday and this Friday. I was like, and I every now and then that happens because I realize that I haven't done it. I haven't taken some time just for me just to recuperate. And so I think to your point, you have to put it on the calendar. You have to be intentional with anything that is important. You need to schedule time for it. You need to make time for it. It's just not going to happen. And yeah, it's just not going to happen.
It doesn't, but why do you think that we have a hard time adapting to a true work-life balance, right? That's what people preach, right? I hear it all the time. Come here, come
Yeah,
work for us. We have a great work-life balance. And you get there and realize they must have meant you have a work balance because you ain't got a life
yeah,
balance.
yeah. I think because you get in a rut, and I think you know, the meetings are going to keep coming. People are going to keep putting stuff on your calendar, right? Like you're going to keep. It's always going to be something. And so I think most organizations will work you till they can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so it's up to you to take control. And I think that's a key message here today is that you have to be intentional about making sure you're taking care of yourself. You have to. Nobody else is going to do it. I can put it in my husband's hand. He might schedule me one appointment and then he gonna go worry about himself. You know what I'm saying? So it's each individual for themselves in terms of maintaining and ensuring that you're taking care of yourself.
I agree. So I want to bring it together for you, right? So how do these strategies work together to build resilience? First, practicing mindfulness and self-awareness will help catch your stress early. From there, you can use effective stress management techniques to help reduce stress before it leads to burnout. And finally, maintaining a healthy work-life balance ensures you have time to recharge and stay organized or energized. As I mentioned earlier, my zapper is not enough hours of sleep, right? So I'm tossing, I'm turning, I'm thinking about, I'm in school, I'm thinking about school, I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about life. All that plays into my level of burnout and to me crashing as I frequently do. So I think for me, I have to definitely practice more mindfulness, be more self-aware, and then practice my stress management techniques. I think those are going to be keys for me to help eliminate burnout. Before we get over to the action plan, I just want to talk a little bit more about that work-life balance. And I want to talk about three things specifically that I think will help you manage that work-life balance. And the first thing is setting those clear boundaries between work and personal life. Work often creeps into every hour of your day. You're going to be burnt out. So we want to make sure that work is not creeping to every hour of the day. So I go back to, I challenge you to start scheduling time on your calendar for you. Schedule that lunch break so nobody puts something there. Schedule that end day so nobody puts anything there after that meeting. Start to set those clear boundaries. Start to reclaim your weekends. Make your weekends for you. Make your holidays for you. I can't tell you how many times I've worked as a leader and the weekends become Friday afternoon and Monday starts on Sunday. I didn't protect my personal time, but you know what happened, Dr. Roberts Turner? I ended up being burnt out.
Yeah.
I ended up crashing. I ended up
Yep.
not being effective at work because I wasn't
Yeah.
setting boundaries. And then you know
Yeah.
what happens? I miss deadlines. And then what am I
Yeah.
doing? I'm running on a hamster wheel, stressed.
Yep. Yeah.
My second thing I
And let
want you
me
to
just
do.
say this to you. Let me just say this to you too. I think in terms of everybody's schedule is different. You know what I mean? Like I'm up at 3 a.m. and I'm done at work. Normally I'm done at 3. So knowing that, and that's not the normal work day, I have to have a little bit of flexibility when I know when I come home, I might have to do a little bit more work because people are still working. However, I cut it off at 8. You know what I mean? Like, so I think whatever that is that works for you in terms of setting boundaries and setting expectations, it has to work for you. I can't work on everybody else's schedule because I'm just not going to be as effective as I can. I've tried, it doesn't work. So whatever that is, you define that for yourself. And so, DJ,
Mhm.
as you talk about work-life balance, that might look different for somebody else
Agree.
who, you know what I mean? So everybody's is different. And someone said to me the other day, you'll never have work-life balance. um, I don't know if I agree with that. I think how it's defined is individualized, right? So what
Agree.
it looks like for me might look different than what it looks like for you, and that's fine too. But I know for a fact that the crazy hours that I live in, this space, Renee Roberts Turner world, ain't for everybody. It's not, and that's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
So I'm interested. We have a few on the and the few participants. If you want to put in the chat, if you feel like you have a grasp and the control of your work-life balance, I'd love to see what that looks like in the chat. If you feel like you do, just say yes. If you don't, say you can put no into the chat. While you're typing in the chat, I'm going to wrap this up. The next, as I talk about setting clear boundaries, is prioritizing self-care. Dr. Roberts Turner, how do you prioritize self-care? Because you just mentioned you get up at 3 in the morning and you
Ooh.
up to 8, 9. So how do you prioritize self-care?
So I, I don't know if I shared this. Did I tell you about my she shack, DJ?
You
I
did not.
have, okay, so probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I changed one of our rooms into a she shack. So every morning I get up, I do all the things you have to do in the bathroom, I get dressed, and then I go into my she shack that has my hair stuff, my all my accessories, all my shoes, and I sit there and I do spend some time in the mirror messing around, doing what I'm gonna do, and I spend about 15, 20 minutes in there every morning. That is my time. And then I also have a pretty long commute to work. And so it's early, it's dark, and no one else is out, and I'm in the car by myself. And that is really time for me to do a lot of self reflection. I plan for the day. That's how I get my day now started. Now I will say this. My daughter worked with me this summer. She worked and I had to tell her she got to take herself to work. Like she impeded on my self time. And so she had to sometimes like drive herself to work. So I think what I realize is that really is how I rejuvenate myself for the day and how I keep going is that little bit of time that I have for myself in the morning before anybody gets up. That's what I do. Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And once again, as you just mentioned, right, everybody's self-care is going to look a little bit different.
Hmm.
So your self-care looks a little different than how my self-care will look, and probably how different than what Angie's self-care will look.
Right.
The
Right.
last thing I want you to do to help you with a work-life balance, I think a lot of leaders struggle with this, and that's delegating tasks.
I love to delegate. I do. I love it.
For
I
a
look
lot of,
at it as an opportunity for the people I delegate to. It's an opportunity, right? Like I don't look at it as it's an opportunity because I'm going to help you, but
yeah.
I love to delegate. Yeah. Yes.
So delegate when appropriate. As leaders, it's tempting to take on everything, especially when you feel like your team can't do it. You start taking on everything. But delegate really helps you offset that workload and allows you to focus on the high priority areas without feeling overburdened. So,
Yeah.
setting clear boundaries, prioritizing self-care, and delegating tasks will be my three top things that if you were to
Mhm.
take away anything, I would love for you to take away that, because those things will really help you eliminate burnout and become a resilient leader.
Mhm. Mhm.
Dr. Roberts Turner, this is you.
So before we finish up this call today, I wanted to share with you an action planning and next steps. So this is something we want to challenge each of you all to really think about over the next 7 days. And maybe even before we hang up, identify two specific energy zapping activities to eliminate or to reduce from your daily routine. So we did that exercise. If there's one or two that maybe you can eliminate, and set a plan to try to do that within the next 7 days. And then maybe in 14 days, try to implement at least one resiliency building practice that you can do on a regular basis, like exercise, mindfulness, or meditation, whatever works for you, right? Because again, I think we have to be. One of my girlfriends loves to exercise, and I'm like, that's just not for me. But it definitely is for her in terms of her helping to support her resilience. And then think about in the next 30 days, try to schedule regular check-ins with your colleagues or mentor to discuss your progress because it's important that you have someone that maybe can hold you accountable for your plan. And that's one thing that I've learned over time. You can create these plans, but having someone that you share the plan with so they can then, when they talk to you next time, be like, how's it going with that, with your exercise routine? That kind of holds you accountable when somebody
Yep.
knows what you're planning to do. And then in the next 60 days, try to review and refine your personal action plan, adjusting your strategies. And so I think what DJ and I have talked about here in creating this plan is we want to make sure that this time you spent with us, that there is something that you walk away with a plan that you can then take and incorporate into your work or into your life. And so that's hopefully this action plan will help you do that so that that you have something to go back to. What I found over time is if you don't have something to refer back to, or you put that in a little drawer over here and you forget about it, um, it'll be a year later and you'll pull that out and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't do it. So how do you incorporate your plan into your everyday? So
And I think to the point, right, we've placed, and I have Angie replaced in the chat just because you haven't seen it, is that Energy Zappers. And that Energy Zapper actually gives you 10 spots to identify, things that are draining your energy. And at the very bottom of it, it talks about now let's identify one zapper and one action item or one action step we can do to eliminate that zapper. So definitely do that assignment today, and take it serious because our whole goal is to prevent burnout and ensure that you're a resilient leader. So, Dr. Robert Turner, I think this is a great action thing. I'm honestly going to try to get more hours of sleep. So when we check in, I want you to hold me accountable
I
and make
will.
sure I'm getting that sleep. So
Absolutely.
let's bring this all together and ignite some energy, right? We talked about energy zappers. Building personal resilience is an ongoing journey. It's not about a one-time fix. It's about constantly putting in the work to stay strong and energized. a key part of this is identifying and addressing those energy zappers. And that's why we've given you the tools to address those energy zappers. These are the things that drain you mentally, emotionally, and physically. Creating a personal resilient plan isn't just about addressing more tasks in your day. It's about recognizing that these energy zappers are zapping your energy and causing mental, physical, and emotional drains on you. So this resilient plan that Dr. Roberts Turner talked about is tailored to you. It is your plan. You are designing it. You are the creator, you are the author, and you have to hold yourself accountable. But as Dr. Roberts Turner have stated, you can get you an accountability partner to really help you stay on track to remove those energy zappers out. So don't just wait for your energy to come back on its own, because it never does that. Go after it. Find those energy zappers and zap them. Dr. Roberts Turner, do you have anything as we before we take
I,
some questions?
I'm not adding anything to that. That you could drop the mic on that one. Yeah, that was great.
All right. Well, we're come to the question section. I know some people have mics, or you want to put anything in the chat. If you're a registered nurse, you're able to scan this QR code, and I think Angie's going to drop the link in the chat to fill out the evaluation. Even if you're not a nurse, we want to fill out the evaluation. We want to know if this presentation resonated with you. We also want to know what you've learned from the presentation and how you're going to take what you've learned to and apply it to your everyday life. So please scan that QR code, as well as visit the link here. Let me get the link. If you're not able to scan, place it in the chat. Oh, it looks like Angie beat me to it. Place it in the chat. Please fill that out. That really will help us a lot to learn what you thought about the presentation, so we can make tailors and tweak to it just to make sure it is there for everyone and it is useful. Do we have any questions? I'll turn it over to the audience. Let's see if there's any in the chat. Okay, no questions. So I'll end with this, and I think me and Dr. Roberts Turner like this quote here. Resilience is not about bouncing back, but about bouncing forward. And I want us to remember that. Once again, resilience is not about bouncing back, but about bouncing forward. And, you know, I hope that over this hour, you've gained additional knowledge on how to manage burnout and become a resilient leader. I know myself and Dr. Roberts Turner worked on this for some time. We really wanted to bring in our strategies and hand them over to you guys so you guys can prevent burnout and be more effective leaders. Dr. Roberts Turner, I'll let you do the closing.
Sure. So I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. I would ask that if you haven't checked out my website, that you do so. I'm at reneerobertsturner.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I have a newsletter that comes out monthly about all things leadership. And so I've looked forward to that. I also have a book that I wrote. It's called The Diamond Model, and a workbook, and it has some of these exercises similar to what we did today, exercises that can help you continue to develop your professional excellence. So thank you, DJ, and thank you for joining us.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time. There will be a follow-up email with the presentation notes and the zappers, as well as the self-check-in.